How many of you remember where you were and what you were doing on September 11, 2001? My friends and I, we were about 5 or 6 years old. We did not know what was going on, but we knew this was not a normal day. We knew that something terrible had happened. This day, it turned out to be one of the worst days in history. People woke up that morning, went to their respective jobs. They had no idea how this day was going to change their lives forever. The attack on the World Trade Center was part of a strategic plan by a terrorist group. I will be giving you information about who attacked us, why, mapping out the attacks as they unfolded, how families who lost loved ones and friends were affected, and how the world changed after September 11, 2001. The United States was attacked by an Islamic terrorist group from Saudi Arabia and other Arab nations. These attacks were financed and organized by a Saudi fugitive named Osama bin Laden. According to CNN reports, they were allegedly acting in retaliation for America's support of Israel, its involvement in the Persian Gulf War, and our continued military presence in the Middle East. Some of these terrorists also took flying lessons in the United States. This was very disturbing to the American people. They could not understand how the United States allowed these people into the country and how they taught these people how to fly. In the morning on September 11th, 4 planes were hijacked by 19 hijackers. Their mission? Carry out suicide attacks against the United States. The 19 terrorists easily smuggled box cutters and knives through security at 3 East Coast airports and boarded 4 flights bound for California. These planes that were bound for California were deliberately chosen because of the amount of jet fuel that they were having for the long trip. These 4 terrorists, they turned these 4 ordinary planes into guided missiles. Each of these planes had different targets. According to the New York Times, the flights that were hijacked included American Airlines Flight 11, United Airlines Flight 175, American Airlines Flight 77, and United Airlines Flight 93. 2 of the planes were flown into the towers at the World Trade Center. A 3rd plane hit the Pentagon, and the 4th landed in a rural field in Pennsylvania. At 8:45 on a clear Tuesday morning, an American Airlines Boeing 767 Flight 11, loaded with 20,000 gallons of jet fuel, crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. This left a huge burning hole near the 80th floor of the 110-story skyscraper, instantly killing hundreds and trapping thousands more on higher floors. As soon as this happened, chaos broke out in the streets of New York. Evacuation of the tower and its twin began. TV cameras broadcasted live images and initially reported that this was just a freak accident. 18 minutes after the first plane hit, a second Boeing 767 United Airlines Flight 175 appeared out of the sky. It took a sharp turn toward the World Trade Center and sliced into the South Tower near the 60th floor. The collision, it caused a massive explosion. TV broadcasts began reporting that America was under attack. Millions of people watched or listened to the events unfolding from any radio or television that they could. While this was happening, American Airlines Flight 77 circled over Washington, D.C., slammed into the west side of the Pentagon Military Building at 9:45 a.m. The jet fuel from the Boeing 757 caused a devastating fire that led to the collapse of a portion of the giant concrete building. The 4th plane, United Flight 93, was hijacked about 40 minutes after leaving Newark International Airport in New Jersey. The plane had been delayed in taking off, so passengers were already aware of what was taking place in New York and Washington, D.C. The reason the 4th plane did not make it to its destination was because of the bravery of passengers on Flight United 93. The passengers fought 4 hijackers and are suspected to have attacked the cockpit with a fire extinguisher. The plane flipped over and sped toward the ground at upwards of 500 miles per hour, crashing in a rural field in Pennsylvania. The FBI says the intended target is unknown, but the theories include the White House, the U.S. Capitol, Camp David Presidential Retreat in Maryland, and several nuclear reactor plants on the eastern seaboard. Many families were affected by these attacks. Some families were affected by the loss of injury of a loved one or a friend. At the Pentagon, 125 military personnel and civilians were killed. Also, all 64 who were on flight. Close to 3,000 people died in the World Trade Center and its vicinity. This includes a surprising 343 firefighters and paramedics, 23 New York City police officers, and 37 Port Authority officers who were trying to execute an evacuation and save people who were also on higher floors. About 10,000 people were treated for injuries, and many of those were severe. All 45 people aboard Flight 93 were killed. On September 11, 2001, the world changed. It also changed how we see it. 2 months after the attacks, Congress federalized airport security by passing the Aviation and Transportation Security Act, which created the Transportation Security Administration, also known as TSA. The protocols for traveling changed in a big way. The new TSA implemented procedures that included stricter guidelines on the passenger and luggage screening. As new threats were discovered after 9/11, the procedures were introduced. This included now removing shoes and banning liquids. Airplanes themselves also underwent major renovations. Fortified cockpit doors were introduced. Pilots could also now apply to become federal flight deck officers. This means that they will be allowed to carry a loaded gun and act as a federal officer aboard the plane. September 11th also changed how Americans viewed people from the Middle East. According to Homeland Security, the country with the most notable drop in visa issuance after 9/11 was Pakistan. In 2002, the number of tourist visas given to Pakistani citizens fell almost 70%, and the immigrant visas dropped more than 40% compared to 2001. The Department of Homeland Security says that deportations as a whole rose by 104% from 2001 to 2010. Anti-Islamic violence in America jumped after the attacks as well. According to the FBI, 28 hate crimes were committed in 2000. In 2001, that number jumped to 481 attacks, and it remained above 100 in the following years. September 11th not only changed our lives, not only changed the lives of 3,000 families, not only changed the lives of friends, but it also impacted the United States of America. This date changed the world forever, and it's a date that will never be forgotten. These attacks have proven that even after such a traumatic loss, our nation still stands strong. After listening to this speech, I am sure that most of you remember where you were and what you were doing on September 11, 2001. I do.